Batman here with another movie review, this time on The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And being a big Spider-Man fan, I gotta say I was really satisfied with this movie. There's just so much they did right. There were some things that they did wrong, but I'll just get right to it with this spoiler review. So you have been warned. If you guys have not seen the movie and do not want to be spoiled, please click away. The review starts right now. Peter Parker is played once again by Andrew Garfield, and he was a great choice in The Amazing Spider-Man 1, and he's just perfect in this role. He's like the Spider-Man I read in the comics, and he just sells it with all the humor as well as balancing it out with some of his his love with Gwen Stacy, played by Emma Stone. And they really sell this movie. The movie really focuses on their relationship, which is good because they have great on-screen chemistry, and I think that also translates well because they are dating in real life, and you can see that they are bringing some of that to their roles. This movie picks up not sure how far after The Amazing Spider-Man 1. You can tell that Peter's really loving being Spider-Man, but he's also having trouble keeping his promise to Gwen's father, because he promised that he would stay away from Gwen to keep her safe, but he loves her too much, and it's really cool to see that conflict building in him and how he still wants to be part of her life, but then she has to move on. Some of the other things that conflict Peter's life in this movie are, of course, Max Dillon becoming Electro, which is basically a really great performance by Jamie Foxx. What's also cool is how we don't see much of Electro because this movie really focuses on Peter, which it does really well. But I will say that the story itself is really crowded. First off, of course, Peter and Gwen, Peter's life as Spider-Man, and how the city views him, but that's kind of minor. So Green Goblin, played by Dane DeHaan, but of course throughout most of the movie he is Harry Osborn, and I thought he really did a good job on that, and I'll revisit that point later. Electro, we do see Rhino in all the promotions, but in the movie he's not that big of a plot point. He's just kind of there, so you don't have to worry too much about him. But then there is still Peter's parents. Surprisingly, was not that even big of a focus in this movie compared to the last one, and the movie actually even started out with how his parents died, and then the whole story about them isn't fully revisited until like maybe like the third quarter of the movie. What really worried me was how there were 3 villains in this movie, and I thought it would suffer the same fate that Spider-Man 3 did, where it was a little too crowded. But then with The Amazing Spider-Man 2, this was a lot more triumphant compared to Spider-Man 3. The Rhino, played by Paul Giamatti, was alright in his first action scene. It was pretty much in the opening, and then we also see him in the ending in his full Rhino suit, which looked pretty good. But I was kind of hoping, he would go on more of a rampage, charging through streets and like knocking cars up in the air. That would have been cool. I'm glad that when Harry and Peter, they kind of rekindle their friendship, it doesn't feel rushed at all, because you can tell that they have had a history together, and they kind of show a little bit of that, and then you can see the bond they have as they kind of, catch up with each other's lives, and maybe make amends for not being there for each other. But it's really cool because even though he is just appearing in this and then eventually becomes the villain towards the end, it still manages to show some kind of dynamic between the 2 characters. One of the things I really liked was the music. At first I thought maybe it might be mediocre, because Hans Zimmer has been doing a lot of music lately, and with Man of Steel he did an average to good score with that. It didn't have a big lasting effect, but here he really makes the action scenes pop, and then when it comes to the emotional scenes, it really hits home. Especially with the scene, which I will talk about now. Emma Stone's character, Gwen Stacy, eventually meets her big demise as she did in the comic books, and I thought that they handled it really great. That big climax was a good balance of Electro and Green Goblin. When Green Goblin came onto the scene, I thought that the music, it really complemented the character and it gave him a good theme. I also loved Dane DeHaan's laugh as Green Goblin. That sounded really creepy and eerie, and it sounded so perfect for him. And I really like the look that, he doesn't need a mask, because his appearance is already so like kind of disfigured with the scars and the facial tissue damage, and it looks like what a Green Goblin look would be without a mask. You're on the edge of your seat because Gwen is like in such huge peril, and Peter's trying to protect her while also trying to fight off Green Goblin. And then eventually when that scene comes and she makes the big fall, I thought they handled that really great. The slow motion and the music that plays as she falls, and then eventually, you know, when we see her death, it's just, it's really cringing because it felt dark, but then you also just feel so sad and just shocked that it happened. And Andrew Garfield totally sold that scene with the heartbreak in his face, and you know, just all the words that were coming out of his mouth as he's, you know, hoping that Gwen's alive, but in actuality she's gone. So yeah, I really did not expect to be that affected by that scene. It even still affected me 2 days after, and it's just such a greatly handled death scene, especially in a comic book movie, especially since of course this is like one of the first big deaths in a comic book. The CGI in this movie looked really great. It's really polished, and just watching Spider-Man move in, you know, his fights or even just web swing, they all are just well polished, and everything looks pretty good in 3D. There wasn't much, you know, 3D where scenes are just coming at you, but it added a pretty good depth, and it made watching him web swing so much more fun. Really, it's hard to think of any of the cons of this movie, other than for sure the first quarter felt a little slow. After we first see Spider-Man, the story is moving kind of slowly, but it really picks up in that second half, especially in that last quarter. I think Mark Webb did a great job on this movie. Of course, when it comes to my rating, I have to give it a 4.5 out of 5. What really hurts it is definitely that slow beginning, but you know, just stick around with it and I think you're gonna like it, and if you don't, that's really too bad, because I thought that was a great comic book movie, and it really did feel like a comic book come to life, and it's great to see the Webhead get that you know, proper movie that he deserves. And one of my favorite scenes of that movie is definitely going to be the ending when he makes his triumphant return. So I won't really spoil that too much because it's such a good scene. So I hope you guys go and check it out. I really enjoyed it. I'm not just hyping it because I'm a big Spider-Man fan. I thought it was a pretty good movie, and I plan to see it 2 more times at least before it is taken out of theaters. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you liked the review, and yeah, take care and see you later.